the increase in petrol price, which comes into effect at midnight tonight, will also have a spillover effect on the cost of public transport and food costs. Most goods are now transported on road due to the country's crumbling rail sector. Let's talk about the impact that this is likely to have on our grocery basket. We're joined by Food Forward South Africa Managing Director, Andy du Plessis. Andy, good evening to you. Thanks for your time. Of course, distributors of food in retail are likely to feel the pinch almost as immediately as the rest of the motorists and consumers in the country, because they have to pay petrol for the movement of these goods just like everybody else.
Absolutely. Good evening, Kathy, and thank you for having us. Without a doubt, so supply chains are quite complex and rely on transport to be able to move goods from one part of the country to another, or one part from a province to another. So they will no doubt feel the pinch. You know, many of our suppliers that we work with have third-party logistics companies that they use for services, and those companies will just pass on those increases onto them, and then retailers and manufacturers will pass those on to customers and whoever purchases from manufacturers, etc. So they will feel the pinch immediately. The poor will feel the pinch even worse, because they are more vulnerable to food price inflation and to price shocks like these that we're going to be seeing in the coming weeks.
Of course, what's even more concerning is when you have the likes of Tiger Brands coming out to warn consumers of really rocket-high food prices over the next 6 months. They're telling us effectively to brace ourselves.
That's right. So Tiger Brands has come out in the press saying that the canned goods purchases have slowed down, as well as the sales of bread has slowed down quite significantly. So they're already telling us that the market has not responded well with the past few price increases in the past quarter or so. And we are likely to see further increases in the coming quarter, because once fuel goes up, food prices escalate almost immediately afterwards. So the poor are going to feel the pinch in their grocery baskets.
In times of increasing food prices, Andy, what do we see consumers do?
So a few things. We find that even the middle class is struggling at this time, and what the middle class is doing, although they have maybe more disposable income to be able to absorb the shock of these price increases in the short term, the poor do not have that luxury. So a few things will happen. Number one, they will immediately switch to cheaper food alternatives and move away from nutritious foods, which are quite expensive anyway. Things like dairy products, cereals are quite expensive. And what we see happening amongst the beneficiary our clientele that we serve is that the parents start to eat less so that the children can eat, and parents even skip meals so that their children can have food. And we will start to see a sharp increase in food insecurity, where people were maybe food insecure for 1 week of every month. Now that may extend to 2 weeks or 3 weeks of every month, just so that the poor are able to cope, because they have to get into a taxi, travel long distances to get to work. Those fares will go up almost immediately. We've heard that Golden Arrow will absorb the price increase right now, but train fares are likely to increase, and millions of people, millions of commuters, mostly the poor, are going to feel that pinch immediately once that petrol price goes through this evening.
Mm-hmm. Let's talk about how organizations like yours, Andy, are also then stepping in as far as providing some kind of cushion, especially for families that would be worst affected by these kind of increases.
We have found that just in the last 2 years, our organization has increased fourfold to be able to support non-profit organizations. To give you some context, 2 years ago, we were supporting a network of 550 registered non-profit organizations. Today, we are supporting a network of 2,400 registered non-profit organizations, reaching close to 875,000 vulnerable people on a daily basis. And we are finding huge demand for food support from our beneficiary organizations, because the demand for food has increased. KZN, with the floods that hit in the last few weeks, they've been struggling severely, but in the last 2 years, since the onset of COVID, people have been struggling severely. And so we are finding that the number of applications into our network, the requests have just gone through the roof as non-profit organizations on the ground that deal directly with feeding programs are requesting food assistance from organizations like Food Forward South Africa.
And, you know, one, of course, also bears in mind the fact that by the time that many families reach out to their local NGOs or even community workers, it is literally the option of last resort that, you know, they've probably been struggling for some time.
Absolutely. So our research indicates, and the Newzroom report, the National Income Dynamics Study report, shows in their study during 2021 that families have been struggling at least for 1 or 2 weeks of every single month to be able to put food on the table. So it's been tough going already for the poor. Our estimates show that roughly 30 million people are food insecure at this present time. That's half our population across South Africa that are food insecure. It's not a sustainable situation. It's not a tenable situation. Which is why organizations like ourselves have ramped up support to make sure that we, in the next few months, we want to reach at least 1 million vulnerable people, especially into the rural communities in which we are, where our mobile rural depot program is advancing at this stage.
And when it comes to getting support from the private sector, just to be able to fund the work that you do, what have you found to be the responses?
Fortunately, over the last 2 years, we've had really good support from corporates, the likes of Investec, Massmart, and a whole host of others have supported us financially and with food donations. But we do understand that they're operating in a constrained environment, in an economic environment that is weak. Unemployment is still shockingly high, although we've seen a marginal increase in today's release of the unemployment statistics. We still find that roughly 45%, when you look at the broader definition of unemployment, 45% of our working age population are unemployed. So we find that our economy is struggling, corporates are struggling, and they have indicated to us that they will not be able to support us over long periods of time. So we anticipate that over the next year, at least, it's going to be tough going for corporates as well, as they struggle to remain in the black, to be able to operate and most likely cut costs. And some people may lose their jobs. So it's going to be a constrained environment, at least over the next 6 to 12 months.